Hello, everyone. Finally, I guess we can get started here. So as Cole said, we're going to be talking about a kind of a different topic, and there's tech involved here. So hopefully you all can enjoy it. I hope you have had a great Hashi talk so far. Today we're going to be talking about scaling HashiCorp's writing culture with internal tooling, and and I'm really excited to kind of talk about some of the things that we've worked on. We've recently open sourced and talk about some of the writing culture at the company. My name is Mishra. I'm the advisor to the CTO. I also lead the HashiCorp Labs team. I'm joined with Josh Freda, who's a staff engineer at HashiCorp Labs as well. So let's get started. So essentially, like in terms of the agenda, you'll see this is a pretty straightforward talk. We're going to talk about HashiCorp, just give a kind of a company overview to get you a sense of scale. You've been probably listening to all the tools and products that HashiCorp has created, or you're working with, but would love to talk about some of the kind of the behind the scenes here. And then we'll talk about how HashiCorp works, in particular the writing culture. We'll talk about Hermes, which is our document management tool, which is open sourced recently. Then Josh is going to tempt the demo gods with a live demo of Hermes. And then we'll talk about some of the architectural challenges on the technical side with Hermes. And then we'll end the talk with current and future of Hermes. So, all right, let's get started. So the first thing, a brief company overview. Most of you recognize these logos. Of course, this is a bunch of our products, in different categories. I'm not going to go into the tools, but you kind of get a sense of like these are 8 different open source projects, right? And we are, HashiCorp in general is a fast-growing company. We are remote, mostly remote to a certain extent, and we have 2,000 plus employees that span 24 countries around the world. We have, as I mentioned in the previous slide, 8 official open source projects. We also have enterprise products. We also have a cloud platform. So it kind of gives you a sense of scale of like all the initiatives that are in the place in the company, and the workforce is essentially distributed in this case with spanning like 24 countries around the world. So now, how does HashiCorp actually work? This was one of the questions, and I've been with the company for almost 5 years, and I've been asked a lot, like could you just kind of talk about some of the processes in the company, things like that. Actually, we've finally published it. I think a while ago now. This is under works.hashicorp.com. You can check it out. That kind of talks about like various things that particularly to the company culture. I'm going to focus on the writing culture in this talk, which is more particular to the problem that we were trying to solve. So HashiCorp's writing culture essentially dates back to the company's earliest days when it was just Mitchell and Armon. Even today, employees write to clarify their ideas. They put together a document, they share it with their colleagues, they get feedback, they get reviews. Then finally, we start building product or features. And the two kind of the important documents, I would say, or like the documents that are used quite often are one of them is called PRD, which is a problem requirements document, essentially defining the problem. And usually it's kind of the product managers that are writing these documents. Then you have the RFC, which is request for comments. This is a more common document for engineers, essentially proposing solutions to those problems. And if you want to check out like in detail of kind of the writing culture, please check out works.hashicorp.com. There's a writing practices and culture section. That'll kind of go in depth into how HashiCorp kind of shares these ideas and so on. So all right, let's talk about kind of a bird's eye view, a very like kind of zoomed out view of how things are done at the company, where you have an idea, you do some ideation, and then you write a PRD, which is kind of the problem statement there. Then you finally write an RFC that gets approved. Then eventually you start implementing, and then things are released, right? And each of these essentially steps has a review process and an approval process. And then eventually, like once you get approved, like let's say a PRD gets approved, you push to kind of a RFC phase. You might have one RFC that pertains to a feature. You might have multiple RFCs and a meta RFC that sits on top. So you have multiple documents that are involved to kind of move the feature, the product forward. And then eventually you kind of implement and release, right? So this looks really good from like a diagram perspective, and it kind of shares that, hey, like you have some process at that company. But all of this was quite manual until like more recently. So for example, an engineer wants to write an RFC, they would go to Google Drive, they would clone a template, they would then like fill in the kind of the contents, then eventually like add collaborators using Google Docs sharing, and then eventually send it out for review, find the reviewers, Slack them or email them, and then in some cases like we'll have to also publish this to a larger mailing list. And at HashiCorp we use a mailing list, so many things, Google Groups in particular. And then in this case, you would actually publish it to a mailing list that's pertaining to this this RFC. And then finally, folks will be aware about this RFC if they read the email or read they're part of the mailing list and so on. So all of this stuff was quite manual. And as you can see, there's some challenges to some of these like processes. In particular, the biggest challenge is just scaling from hundreds of employees to 2,000 plus. When Josh and I joined the company, it was about 5 years ago. It was hundreds of employees, and this process was working, and the process always kind of worked. It's just all the manual pieces, I think, they're harder to scale. And the sheer amount of volume of documents have changed. So we've now, we now produce a lot of documents on a daily basis, monthly basis. These could be RFCs, PRDs, and other document types. And also being able to be consistent across multiple teams now, with the writing process being the backbone of making decisions at the company. And then sharing and discovering documents across teams as well. So as I mentioned previously, is that we use Google Groups and mailing lists for everything. So we have this one big mailing list for RFCs where people just put out, whenever there is a new RFC up for review, or people want to share that with the rest of the company, they would email this mailing list. And what's interesting is that, as the company grew, the volume of emails from this one mailing list, it just begins to grow. And it's really hard to keep track. Which one should you read? Which one should you not read? And, which one interests you? So it becomes quite difficult as an individual consuming some of these documents. And then also onboarding new employees is difficult. Like when a new employee joins, they have to understand all of the intricacies of this process. If it's manual process, then you may miss some steps because you're new, or whatever reason. It's there needs to be some consistency to easily kind of ramp them up as they onboard in the company. So these were some of the challenges, and our response was a tool, an open source one. More recently, we've open sourced. It's called Hermes. And we looked out at like the ecosystem outside to see if there's tools that are particularly trying to solve this problem, and knowing we were kind of going to create something that's more opinionated and focused to HashiCorp. We created a document management tool. This is basically designed for HashiCorp employees to author, review, approve, discover, deprecate documents. The goal of Hermes is really to provide a consistent, and in this case, opinionated workflows. It's quite tied to how at HashiCorp we do things with Google, Docs and Google Drive and so on. And then more recently, exciting for like our small team, the labs team, we've kind of, and for the rest of the company, I guess also as well, we publicly launched this as like a few weeks ago on the 31st January. So we did a blog about it. You can Google search. If you can't see that link, Google search HashiCorp Hermes, and you should be able to get the blog post and read it. It kind of gives you some background. There's a video you can watch. And then there's also the GitHub repository, which is under HashiCorp-4/Hermes, which you can check out as well. The blog post should link to it as well. So currently, the project is really tied to HashiCorp and the HashiCorp way. And particularly to our processes, but then over time, we want to make it more and more generic, hopefully to kind of solve more use cases here. So I will stop speaking, and I will, let Josh do a live demo and tempt the demo gods and see how that goes for him.
All right. Hello, Hash Talks. So here is Hermes. So as you can see, we can just authenticate using Google. And this will take you to the Hermes dashboard. So if you have any documents waiting for your review, they'll be first here. But then usually you'll just see your recently viewed docs, and then the latest updates from around the company. This can be really cool, especially once you're at like HashiCorp size and there's a lot of updates all the time. It's really cool to get kind of like a timeline of like all the different documents that are popping up. And you can filter these by, in review or just approved. Then if we go back up, here are the different, we have all docs and my docs. So these are just your documents, and then all docs are just documents all around the company. My drafts are the document drafts that you've created, but you haven't shared with anyone yet. So we don't have anything here yet. But then also, as you can see in just like all the views, we have our search bar here, which we have a full text search powered by Algolia. So if you were to, just search, if for whatever reason you have a lot of rewrite RFCs popping around, then you can do rewrite. You can view all the results and the results route. Then if you wanted to just search for Terraform, you can view all the Terraform documents. And what this is doing is takes you to the all docs route. And you can see we have these filters here, which we have in the other ones as well, where you can, filter by type, status, by product, or owner. Let's see, next thing, I think next I'll show just real quickly our email notifications. So we plan to expand this more, which we'll talk about in a bit. But right now we just have basic email notifications where you can subscribe to a different product. So like right now, say I just want to subscribe to Labs and Terraform, I can do that. And then I'll show what happens once we actually create an RFC for one of those. So next, so here are the two different document templates that we open sourced with Hermes. These are the two public ones that HashiCorp has open sourced, RFCs and PRDs, like Mishra was mentioning before. If we go to one of these, you're prompted to populate, certain required and other different metadata for the document. So I want to do like hashtags, demo, summary. I'll do labs because I think I subscribed to that one. And we can see here, we'll just create the RFC. So right now in the background, this is just taking the template, which is currently the public one that we have, and it's copying it, and it's repopulating the document header with the metadata that you've provided into Hermes. Cool, so now we have it. You can see this is the header that I was describing. We need to kind of treat this like read-only data. So we'll talk a little bit later about how we kind of try and manage that. But it's a template. You can see here on the sidebar, this is like where you fill in the different metadata for a document. So you want to like add a new summary, and then we save it. What should happen is now the document has been updated with the new metadata. All right, cool. So now we have an RFC. What I'm going to do is like create some like real RFC content, and yes, RFC looks great. So what you want to do next is request a review. So when you request a review, what would happen here is that normally you just like add approvers. So like it's like Josh. This is just a demo environment with like a couple demo users. So I'm not going to do that right now, but I think you get the idea. So request a review. So this does a bunch of operations now in the background where it's going to first find the new product number. So you can see here, we put all of our products as like this product abbreviation and then like a certain number. So everything's like it's referred to as like lab 001, 002. So it finds that. It'll update the document with that. It'll update the status of the document. It'll replace the document header. Or did the iframe not update? Oh, okay, there we go, cool. Demos, all right. So now it changed the status. It assigned it lab 003 because it's already a 1 and 2. We created a shortcut in Google Drive. I'll show that in a second. And it sent out emails to any of the approvers if you actually had them there. Cool, so because I'm not an approver for this, I created a document before with another user where just to show you what that looks like. So if I'm going to a document where I actually am the approver here, you can see that I have just an approve button. And if I approve, now I got that cool check mark next to my name saying I approve the doc, and you've already approved it. And right now, it's still a manual process for the document owner, which I'll show right here, to move it to the approved status. This is by design right now because HashiCorp wanted to be consistent with the existing workflows where like in the pre-Hermes world, you would actually, you know, just like unbold this and bold this, and that's how you would approve things. So now we have this actual metadata that we're passing around and keeping in Hermes, which in my opinion is a lot nicer. But yeah, if I do want to mark it to approved, now I can do that. And the document is approved. And if for whatever reason you want to move it back into in review, like say like some things come up after it's in review, you can do that. Or at some point, if the document becomes obsolete, you can archive it. All right, so that is pretty much the document life cycle there. You can see now it's obsolete. I think I'll just show real quick the what happens with the email notifications that you get. So basically, every time you create a document, you'll see the service user shares it with you. When your review is requested, you'll get this just saying, you know, your review is requested. And this is bare bones right now, obviously. We do have some work that's already queued up to stylize this and make it look nicer. And that should be coming out soon. And then because I subscribe to the labs product, you can see I just got that email for that. And then, yeah, in the like underneath everything, so in Google Drive, what this is doing is that you configure this all in the Hermes application config, where you point it to these folders where, first, all documents. So this is a flat just structure of all of your documents. We do it because this is actually a lot easier to query Google Drive's APIs to find updated documents and whatnot. But we do also create, in case you do have folks that are used to like kind of poking through Google Drive to find things, we do create this like structure where we create shortcuts to the different documents. So this kind of mirrors the way that HashiCorp did structure everything before Hermes, where it's hopefully easier to discover through search and everything through here. I think that's about it, in case unless I forgot anything. So maybe we'll just take it back to the slides.
Cool. Thanks, Josh. I think it's you next. You're going to talk about architecture and challenges. So I'm excited.
Cool. Yeah. So Hermes architecture. So if you're familiar with other HashiCorp tools, we tried to be consistent here, and it's packaged as a single Go binary with embedded Ember.js web app. And we have it running as two different processes, which are two different Hermes subcommands. One is the server that serves the embedded web app, has the API, which does all the actual logic for everything you saw there during the demo. Kind of interesting, we have an Algolia search proxy because Algolia is powering our search. Normally, if you just have a normal like front end, just a normal web application, you'd probably embed your key in the web app. So then we didn't want to do that, obviously, because we have like proprietary information here to be searched. So all searches get routed through the back end, but then we can still use Algolia client library. So that's kind of cool. And then, I forgot. That was the one thing I forgot. The document URL. So there is a share button in the documents, which provide a thing like it's like /L/RC/lab001. This is cool because then you can share those, and especially if you have like a URL shortener, when you set your company, you can just point it directly at Hermes, and it can route all of those things for you. So normally, if you look at the URLs for Hermes, we're using the Google document IDs, but this is actually we provide that through Hermes. It's pretty cool. And then the second process is the indexer. So this is another background process that you run all the time, and what it does is it continually pulls for updated documents and indexes them for search. So basically, when you publish a document, we put it into index it for Algolia, but then if say through comments in the document and the content changes, you obviously want to continually index it so the search has the latest information. So the indexer does that. And in addition, those document headers that you saw that got rewritten, the indexer will also keep them up to date in case someone accidentally, changes it or something like that. And then here, for dependencies integration. So this looks like kind of a lot, but like we kind of mentioned, HashiCorp is really tied into the Google ecosystem. I think the very first RFCs were already written in Google Docs, so we already had years of documents to integrate with. And like I already mentioned, Google Drive, Gmail for notifications, GCP for the authentication parts there, and Algolia for search. And then we have, we're using Postgres for application data. And challenges, yes, building software is fun. So unstructured data, basically all documents, even though we have templates and everything, people can do all sorts of strange and wonderful things with documents and edit them in all fun ways that since we launched Hermes and we got more and more usage internally, we found a lot of these interesting edge cases to work with. So we definitely made improvements along the way. But I'm sure there's still other edge cases out there and bugs to fix. So that's always a constant challenge. Google Docs editing itself is challenging. I have here a couple of screenshots from the Google docs where you can kind of see the structure of a document. There's all these different things that you need to navigate as you're parsing through it, which is fun. And then everything's just a JSON blob. And everything has just an index of where the position of it in the document. And when you change things, all the positions change. So you can understand why it's like that. If the API, is purely just for the Google Docs UI, that makes sense. But if you're doing stuff like we're doing, where we're just replacing text in the document, this is pretty challenging. And lastly, for internally at HashiCorp, so for certain reasons, some teams have forked, say, the RFC template, and we're not able to support team-specific version or product-specific versions of templates at this time. Some teams can't use Hermes yet. So we still need to support the pre-Hermes workflow of dropping documents just in Google Drive. So what we did is, prior to the open source release, we pulled out all that functionality from our existing indexer. We currently have it's not open source, our legacy indexer, because this is just for HashiCorp, basically, that's continuously pulling our Google Drives for the RFC folders and PRD folders. And it'll still, once the document pops up in there, it'll index everything. So it is available in Hermes. But if you can't, just actually create the document through Hermes, which allows a lot of the nicer workflows that I was shown before.
Cool. Thanks, Josh. I'll quickly cover the last section of the doc, which is essentially the current and the future of the Hermes project. So here's some numbers. As you can see, these are vague on purpose. We can't really talk about exact usage and exact numbers. So I kind of just give you a sense of scale. So we've had hundreds of users since we've launched. I think we launched internally last March. So we've had hundreds of users. It's approximately 20% of the company using Hermes. We have hundreds of unique document views. We've had thousands of Algolia searches in the last 90 days. We've had thousands of RFCs that are being indexed, hundreds of PRDs, and so on, and hopefully more as we add more document types at the company. In terms of current schedule work, so currently the project supports two document types that we have talked about, the PRDs and the RFCs, and both the public templates for HashiCorp that are on works.hashicorp.com are supported. Hopefully in the future, we want to add more custom document types. And then in terms of data migration, we are in an interesting place. We were using Algolia as a NoSQL database. We weren't using a relational database to begin with when we kind of started the project. This can be its whole different doc that Josh can do, or the team can do at some point. But it's very interesting. We are now moving into PostgreSQL, just a relational database, and kind of the source of truth for all non-search data. So that's in the works. We also have the product subscriptions that you saw that Josh showed you with the email notifications when a document is published. Immediately, there's the emails sent to people that are subscribed to those product or areas. We want to make it so that we support, let's say, a weekly cadence where you get a summary at the end of the week of the areas that you are of your interest. You kind of get a list of documents that you can read, and then also support Slack for notifications and so on in the future. So currently the project, this is kind of a disclaimer in a way that the project is in alpha. We don't, guarantee API, backwards compatibility, things like that. We are still kind of changing the project, adding new bits and pieces and so on. It's actively being developed as an unofficial HashiCorp project. Just a note here, but hopefully as we grow, we kind of make the project more and more stable. It becomes easier to contribute and things like that to the project. Future work, it's super exciting. We have a few different areas that we want to focus on. One of them is this thing called related resources. So for example, like someone is reading an RFC or a PRD pertaining to a topic, and then they want to kind of understand, hey, like with this RFC, what's the PRD that it links to? Or try to understand the holistic concept. Are there any videos that are linked to this topic, or are there any wireframes that I can see, and so on? So kind of give you a holistic understanding of a topic. This is what we want to kind of tackle and solve with related resources. We also want to do recommendations based on user like interests. So based on your interest, we want to tailor the HashiDocs, the Hermes experience for the user. And then we have advanced sharing and approval workflow. So basically being able to support multi-level sharing. So for example, someone writes a document, they first want to share that immediately to their team, then maybe share it out for approval to the rest of the company. So how do you customize that sharing process is what we want to kind of focus on as we move on. And that's it. We are happy to answer questions in chat and live or however you want. And super excited to share this with everyone. And hopefully you all have an amazing couple of days with the HashiDocs event. Thank you.